Good evening. Good evening, Anita ma'am. Welcome to
Good
our
evening.
podcast.
Hi.
Good evening. Ma'am, while you need no introduction, I think it's necessary that I introduce you to our audience. Anita ma'am, you have had 36 years of experience in government. You joined the IAS in 1988 from the Gujarat cadre. You retired as Secretary Education, Government of India. You were instrumental in preparing the NEP and the NCF. You served as chairperson of CBSC, and your tenure there saw a lot of reforms, including Nipun Bharat, which is a focus on foundational literacy and numeracy, board examination reforms, reform on Samigra Siksha scheme, teacher training, and it is pretty much where you've spent 3.5 decades of your life. So I'm very, very excited, very honored, very humbled to have you here.
I'm very happy to be with you here.
Thank you, Anita. I would like to ask you why you joined the IAS. When
So, you're asking me this after my retirement. That's
yes,
interesting.
yes.
Okay, why I joined it? I think I joined it, as I was chatting with you earlier, because of the community that surrounded me.
Mhm.
So, I was in college, I was totally aimless. I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. And I was just going from subject to subject, discipline to discipline, BSc in zoology honors, MA in pol science, MPhil in African studies. I had no idea what I wanted to do in life, basically. But when I saw my classmates, all of them getting together and saying, "हम तो UPSC का exam दे रहे," तो I said, "चलो मैं भी दे देती हूँ." That's how it started. And then when I started studying for it, and then I realized the depth of knowledge, the vastness that is required for it. And the process was so good, the learning process, that I had decided that whether I make it or not, I love the journey.
Mhm.
So it was interesting journey. And once I made it, I, went through another training of 2 years, and that also sort of consolidated my idea that learning is so important in life, continuously learning. And it used to make me so excited to know new things, what's happening out there in the world. It was a very nice journey. Yeah.
Ma'am, you're talking about this arduous exam, which is the UPSC, and you're saying that your love and insatiable curiosity around new things, the process of it, created the challenge for you. But today, ma'am, if you look at test prep, there's a different story around it. Uh, so, if test prep students are hearing you today, what would you like to say to them? Often their well-being on the way is just short. So you've enjoyed the process. Now there's hyper competition. There's an entire industry around it. What would you say to them? Because I think it'll be very heartening for them to hear that you went through this process joyfully, um, not
And I
knowing where you wanted to go first.
Yeah, I think competition has always been there. And, when the population was lesser, so the proportionate number of people would have been lesser. But proportionately, they have been the same. For example, taking the UPSC exams. So the competition has always been there. And what I would like to tell them is that the process of learning is far more important than the competition. Because what happens is, when I was studying for the UPSC, the process of learning was so in depth that after that I took various other competitive exams just in case I don't make it.
Mhm.
So I took the banking services recruitment board. I went for some marketing, some interviews. I went for several other interviews, and I made it to all of them,
Mhm.
which goes to show that if that process is in depth, it is something which you feel is relevant for your life, and you take it in your stride and you enjoy it, it is going to be useful to you anyway, sometime in life, somewhere in life. So, but if you put all your eggs in one basket and you think कि इतना पढ़ लिया और मुझे यही करना है, then it can be disappointing at times.
Mhm.
And that leads to, various other issues, including anxiety and mental issues. And you've been hearing about commitment of suicides in quota and all these things.
Mhm.
I think that's because we are completely taken in by something, putting all our eggs in one basket and thinking, पढ़ाई की यहाँ नहीं हुआ तो खत्म. Actually वो पढ़ाई, it is so useful for your entire life because you've acquired so many skills and competencies. You don't even realize it until you start using them in real life.
So just the focus on the rigor of this exam. I um, always look at friends of mine who try to do this and say, look, you'd be a valuable asset regardless of the outcome of this exam, because the sheer stamina and resilience, lateral thinking, vastness that you've gone through is not something most of us go through. So they just
Yeah.
the process of prep, it sets, I think, sets UPSC aspirants apart.
Yes, not just UPSC aspirants. I would say the process of preparation for any competitive exam. So it sets everybody who's preparing for those exams, it sets them apart.
Yes.
And it is like a launching pad for them, not just for the exam you have taken, but a launching pad for life, actually.
Yes.
For so many, there's so much scope of employment after that. There's so much scope of startups, work, because your mind really opens up and you tend to get to know what exactly you want to do in life.
Yes. The process reveals where you want to go.
Yes.
Amazing. I'm hoping that everybody around the country is hearing this and saying, let's focus on the process and not worry too much about that single outcome, and enjoy it. Let's move a little bit now into your tenure in education. You were instrumental in drafting both the NEP and the NCF. The NCF is a very ambitious document. It's coming into place where I think, as a country, we still have so much to do across the socioeconomic spectrum of education around foundational numeracy and literacy. And yet, this document is putting out a massive challenge. We want to get to metacognition skills. We want to get to future skills. Tell us a little bit about the vision and the implementation challenges that you think are going to come the way, but why it's actually achievable as well. So all of it, all of the thinking of behind the NCF.
From the Honorable Prime Minister, when he talks about the national education policy, he says कि ये जड़ से जग तक connect करता है बच्चे को. From the roots, that is, from our heritage, culture, etc., to the globe, to what is happening around us, all the developments around us. So it's a very beautiful statement, and that is in sum total the national education policy and the NCF. Now coming to the NCF, there is a paradigm shift, and which is being looked upon as a challenge, but it really is not a challenge. Mm-hmm. The paradigm shift is that now we are going to look at the 5+3+3+4 system of curriculum and pedagogy, which means that there are 4 stages of learning: the foundational, preparatory, middle, and secondary. Mm-hmm. So at the foundational stage, whatever is the cognitive, emotional, physical development of the child, that will be taken into account and built into the curriculum and pedagogy. Mm-hmm. Similarly, it will be done at the preparatory, middle, and secondary stages. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time that this has been done, where the developmental goals have been aligned with the curriculum and the pedagogy. Let me give you an example. So when a child is in the foundational stage, the child wants to explore, wants to, discover, wants to dirty their hands and play and run around and not sit in one place, and wants to listen to stories, etc. So the curriculum and the pedagogy is like this, exactly like this. Pedagogy is activity-based, play-based, inquiry-based, discovery-based. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of storytelling, there's a lot of rhymes and folk tales and dancing and music, etc. And there is no assessment. It is observation-based, because you can't ask the child to sit down for an assessment. Mm-hmm. So this is for the first time that this is happening. Mm-hmm. And the challenge is only to understand it and implement it. Mm-hmm. Now, understanding is going to take time because teacher training is required for this. Mm-hmm. That is the real challenge. Mm-hmm. I see only one challenge, and that is teacher training and the mindset change. Wow. If this is overcome, the classroom transactions need to change first. Everything else will come पीछे से।
Mhm.
बाकी क्या हो रहा है, एग्जाम कैसे हो रहा है, टेक्स्ट बुक्स कैसे बन रही हैं, टीचिंग लर्निंग मटेरियल क्या हो रहा है, लैंग्वेजेस में क्या चेंज आ रहा है. इफ द क्लासरूम ट्रांजैक्शन चेंजेस टू दैट जॉयफुल pedagogy, for example, which is required at the foundational stage, we have done it.
Mhm.
As far as we are concerned, we have implemented NEP and NCF.
That the civil service was described as the steel frame. But if for you to give another phrase for the teachers will be the new X for the implementation. What phrase would you use? And a little bit around the centrality of the teacher.
I think the teachers, learning is as good as the teachers.
Yes.
So education is as good as the teachers are. If the teachers are good, education is good, quality is good. The centrality of the teacher is something which is not lost either in the NEP or in the NCF. In fact, there is a huge amount of focus now that the NCF for school education is out. There is an NCF for teacher education which is coming out because it has to align itself with that of the school education. I would say that the teachers are the oxygen of the of learning.
Wow.
They are so important.
Yeah.
You can't breathe in learning unless you have teachers either teaching you, facilitating you, being your mentor, being your guide, or just being your friend, coming along and helping you learn.
Yes.
So yes.
And ma'am, in the document, actually, I'm reading from page 11, and I'm sure your heart was in writing these sentences. It says on page 12 or 11 of the NCF that teachers is who is ultimately the torch bearer for the changes we seek.
Yeah.
As such, it is the perspective of the teacher that must be carried by all, including syllabus, content developers, textbook writers, administrators, and others. So it's right there that the centrality of the teacher.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's another very interesting thing. By the way, this NCF was not written by me. It was
Right.
written by a group of
Yes.
experts.
That's right.
I was part of the deliberations and, pointing out this is wrong, let's add this, let's remove this, and stuff like that. Yeah, so I was going to say is that for the teachers, there is a very interesting thing which is provision which is given in the National Education Policy again for the first time. If you see the previous two policies, it is not there, and that is teacher agency.
Mhm.
For the first time, teacher autonomy or teacher agency has been spoken about, and for the first time, student agency has been spoken about.
Mhm.
And this is something earlier क्या हो रहा था, ऊपर से हम जैसे बोलेंगे वैसे करो.
Mhm.
हमने टेस्ट पेपर भेज दिया, आप करो.
Mhm.
हमने आपको किताब दे दी, आप पढ़ाओ, चैप्टर बाय चैप्टर पढ़ाओ, सिलेबस कंप्लीट करो. That thing, that there is a major shift there now.
Mhm.
Now we are saying here are the competencies. Use whatever teaching learning material you want to use, but ensure that the competencies are achieved. It's your autonomy. You go ahead and do it. The
Mhm.
student has also got that agency. The student has the agencies to decide this is the language I want to learn, this is the subject I want to take up. And the student also has the agency to decide on the course of their own life, with the help of vocational and
Mhm.
skill exposure. Yeah.
Mhm. It's quite turning the system on its head from
Yes.
top down to really allowing choice,
Yeah.
self-directed behavior almost. And I know that the NCF again refers to self-directed behavior along for the teachers as well. I'm a little bit around, and I think I've got a little bit of a bias, assuming that a large percentage of our teachers are also women. And I just want you to touch a little bit upon that. I heard a previous podcast with you. It was a beautiful podcast, and talked about your own personal journey and the balance, even as an IAS officer in the early first years. Our teachers' own well-being is very crucial to their professional development and their career. So, in terms of policy and in terms of what you've been advocating for, what are your views on that? Because we're restricted with compensation increases, so that incentive is not always there. How do you really embolden the teacher, focusing on her well-being and her professional development, so that she continues to persist?
It's interesting that you asked this, Vinati, because after we did the National Mental Health and Wellbeing Survey of students, I got the whole team to sit down, and we started working on a survey, a similar survey for teachers, because I felt that these are the two stakeholders. Unless we know where they are, we will not be in a position to, implement any reforms. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes in the way things turn out, we tend to forget the importance of their well-being. And so, yes, there are various issues related, starting from training. Of course, high quality training needs to be given. Governance, administration, salary structure, tenure, promotion, etc. All these issues are there. In different states, there are different issues. But how does a teacher persevere? How does a teacher
Yes.
continue to go on? Uh, from my experience of teachers in Gujarat, because I've extensively traveled in schools and, you know, interacted with teachers in Gujarat and also in some other states, my own impression is teachers are really good in this country. The quality is really good, and they are actually character builders. They're actually devoted and dedicated people. The problem is, we as educational administrators perhaps do not give them that environment to work in. We do not give them that autonomy. We do not allow them to function in the manner that they can best utilize their own learnings to achieve the unique potential of the child. We are not allowing that. If we do, because I've seen so many cases, wherever it's been made possible, I have seen teachers. Let me give you the example of a teacher from Gujarat. So this guy is a maths teacher. He's a national awardee, teacher awardee. You know what he used to do? To teach maths, since he also had IT knowledge, every concept, every topic, he will make a game app.
Wow.
Okay. And everything is on his app. There are apps built by him in Gujarati. Okay. And then the children, they used to love to play it, and in the process, they would learn. Imagine who told him to do it. Nobody asked him to do it. He did it on his own. There is this teacher from Chhattisgarh, who is a national awardee. She's very interesting. She's very fond of music, and she's very fond of making writing small poetry and raps. So whatever she wanted to teach, or especially areas which related to values and attitudes, उसको उसने रैप बना देना, गाना बना देना, और उसको फिर बच्चों को सिखाना, and the kids are having great fun. I remember when she was called for the award, then we have this meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister, and the Honorable Prime Minister also asked her कि आप मतलब ये सब आप करती हैं? तो she was so happy to tell him, मैं सब करती हूँ, आप बताओगे तो मैं अभी कुछ बना के बता दूँ. So much of enthusiasm, you know. So teachers are not to be blamed. I think the system is not allowing them to flower into into their own unique potential. That's what I feel.
What can administrators do more, ma'am? Because you're making a
Okay.
distinguishing, statement here between within a school system, their administrators, their teachers. What can they do to equip teachers
So
to?
this is the bane. I have to give you one more example. I had called these teachers from the foundational level from across the country. So I had handpicked a few teachers from each state and called them over, and I was chatting with them that how do we get Nipun Bharat across? So there was this teacher who gets up and she tells me that, Madam, हम चाहते हैं कि बच्चा बाहर जाए, खेले, सब करे. तो मैं एक बार पेड़ के नीचे ले गई, स्कूल के अंदर, कंपाउंड के अंदर, पेड़ के नीचे बच्चे को पढ़ा रही हूँ. वो स्कूल इंस्पेक्टर आया और उसने मुझे नोटिस दे दी कि हाउ कम द चिल्ड्रन आर आउटसाइड द क्लास. दिस इज व्हाट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट. यू सी द माइंडसेट. It's not just the teacher, the parent, the student. It is the educational administrator who needs to understand that the entire process of education is changing. There is a lot of flexibility in the way we do pedagogy. Pedagogy is not chalk and board anymore. It is the sky is the limit. You can do any kind of pedagogy as long as it's relevant, it is joyful, it is engaging. So these are things which they need to understand. So in fact, I'm hoping it should come out soon. I was very keen to start a nishtha for educational administrators.
Absolutely.
And yeah, in fact, in my time, I had already directed the NCRT. They are preparing it also, and I think it should be coming out soon.
Yes, because sometimes the background of administration is not necessarily education as well. So it's interesting to see how that plays out. I think it is absolutely clear that the teacher remains central. And I think oxygen is the word. She's the oxygen. And in many ways, if she's the oxygen to learning, then she's also the oxygen for the future of the entire country. I mean, education is
Yes,
not a sector, it's not industry, it's truly everything. It's the bedrock of where we're going to go from here on.
it is nation building at
Yes,
its best.
yes,
So, whatever she's doing, she's actually building the nation.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I hope every teacher is hearing you, ma'am, because I think it's difficult, to go every day. You've got 40 little children. You've got your own life. It's not something that even regular professionals do. You don't interact with 40 people at the same go every hour for 8 hours a day. We've never really thought about that. You have one-on-one conversations, you have a meeting of 10 people. But really, the strength, the mental strength that
But
they
Vinati, so I have a different view on this because the teachers I have met, they are so excited about, every time a child learns something,
yeah.
they go back home completely satisfied, even if it is one out of those 40 children in her class.
Mhm.
And that kind of satisfaction is what motivates them. So, what I see is that they don't see it as a routine or something, or as a burden or an obligation that they have to fulfill.
Mhm.
Uh, Majority of the teachers are those who are very excited about teaching and learning.
That's excellent. That's absolutely, I mean, we are grateful to them uh,
Yes.
because it's such a generous profession, right? The rest of us actually have,
Noble profession. Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
we have a little bit of knowledge and we monetize it. And here you have a teacher whose
Yeah.
entire life is actually giving away that knowledge.
Yes.
So she does, and he does stand apart. I want to shift the conversation a little bit. We've discussed, your role and your vision with the NCF for the nation. But I want to talk about your other avatar, which is that of an author. You have written several books, but the one I've deeply engaged with is this fabulous book called Power of Curiosity. Um, it came out almost at the end of your tenure. Um,
Oh, it came out after my tenure.
After your tenure, right?
Yes.
And if the professional magnus opus is the policy document, then this is sort of a very, very interesting follow-up. Um, and I just want to kind of address this book because it's a fascinating book. And what's most fascinating for me in the book is that you have uh, a quintessential child who's QB, who's the protagonist, and then the narrator is the classroom.
Yeah.
And what's even more fascinating, at least because our world is a world where we are trying to balance emotion and cognition, is that you've named these classrooms after parts of our brain,
Yeah.
where there's the excited amygdala, there's the prefrontal decision-making cortex, there's the hippocampus, which is talking about memory. What is the architecture that how did you all of you authors decide on this, where you're going to use the brain um, and the classroom and the quintessential child? Tell me a little bit about the genesis of this book.
So you have probably hinted on it while you were talking just now. So when we were discussing this book, firstly, we knew that that if I want to get across the national education policy and the NCF in an interesting manner, engaging and joyful manner,
Yes.
then we have to write a fiction and not non-fiction.
Very interesting.
Uh, and then when the three of us we were discussing that how we present it, it could have been a story where QB goes home and then घर में क्या हो रहा है, उसकी community में क्या हो रहा है. Then we felt it is going to divert the attention completely of the reader. We want to only focus on the school and
Mhm.
how do we do it, and that's how we struck upon this idea of the classroom narrating it. But naming it after the brain parts was again a discussion that we went through, that it is the brain which is involved in cognition. However, if we show that the brain is also involved in emotion, in humor, in anger, in anxiety, in concern, maybe it will send the message that, the child is not just cognition, the child is much more.
Yes.
So that was the idea. So that's why you see all this leg pulling and, somebody saying, I know this, and somebody saying, oh, you know too much. And, one of the classrooms is very happy person, the other one is very suspicious. The amygdala is always suspicious. So things like that, And
Yes.
frontal, of course, is too full of himself or herself,
Yes.
That was the idea. And if you have seen in the book, we have named the children also. These are agnostic names, they are in the sense that they are not related to any community or tradition or culture.
Mhm.
It's about the child, what the child represents. Yeah.
It's just brilliant because, if you think about it, it's our collective challenge where no two brains are the same.
Yeah.
There's one teacher, one particular curriculum is being taught. But I mean, if you were to literally put like an fMRI, or I was imagining this while I was reading this book, if you put an fMRI on top of one of your chapters, what you're trying to really show is that interaction of the brain, the emotion, the cognition, the peers, the possibilities, kind of the self-doubt, all of that has to be recognized somewhere in the classroom so that the teacher's cognizant of it and then can enable one child uh, with their own particular path. I mean, you talk about, the that people learn differently.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that even when we interact with individuals, forget the teacher who's seeing so many. So it's just a brilliant lab. I think the book is a lab. It's a classroom lab where I think, if we can balance that emotion and cognition,
Yeah.
we'll be able to sort of move.
Yeah. And one thing, I don't know if you've noted, most of my teachers are females.
Yes.
But for the principal is a male. But
Yes.
the sequel, which will be coming in this itself, we've gotten a female principal this time because we felt, now we are going to show some other angles too, how a female leadership changes things
Oh, fantastic.
in
Ma'am,
a different way.
speak a little bit more about that. Speak a little
Okay,
bit
so
more about this. Yeah.
yeah, so when children are growing up, they need a very, very sensitive touch, and they need mentors who connect to them very easily,
Mhm.
right? And this is actually something which females are able to do far better.
Mhm.
And perhaps because of the amygdala in there, is a little better formed in females. And this is known, this is biologically known that it's a little better formed. And because of that sensitivity, the way females become leaders is slightly different from how men show leadership. Let me
Mhm.
give you my own example.
Thanks, ma'am.
All my life, I have been told by my male superiors कि you are too mild, you are too calm, तुम चिल्लाती नहीं हो, तुम डांटती नहीं हो, तुम कुछ भी कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकती. You can't control your office, you can't manage. I've been told all my life because I am a very calm person. I I try and maintain the dignity of everybody in my office. I take them along. That's the way I am because I'm a female, I suppose.
Mhm.
My male counterparts would be absolutely different. I mean, I also know of my male counterparts, some of them who insult at the drop of a hat, shout, unka khud ka BP बढ़ता रहता है. I've never done it.
Mhm.
So that is what I'm talking about in a school. So here was a headmaster in Power of Curiosity who had that connection with the children.
Mhm.
Okay, and he had that connection with the teachers also. You
Mhm.
you see the way he manages the teachers and how he got alphabet teacher to become to change, etc. Now you will see in the next one even more creative ways of bonding with students and with teachers because there's going to be female leadership.
Fantastic. It's interesting you're mentioning that, ma'am. We had a podcast with the principal earlier, and she heads a school in DPS in Jaipur, and she says, I have to think about my teacher's well-being and a differentiated teacher, which I thought was very interesting. That the point that she was making, and it will be fascinating to watch. You know, can compassionate, empathetic, behaviors go up with a different kind of a setting. It'll be fascinating to watch that. And we will wait for the sequel. When is it out, ma'am?
No, it'll take some time.
Okay. So I'm going to actually read something from the book, ma'am, because I think it's, at the end of the book, and because ChatGTP was launched this year, this year earlier, you're saying schooling in the future shall become even more inclusive with the help of several modes of delivery, digital, through community, etc. That will make quality content available in the public domain. The artificial intelligence-based digital systems will make students aware of their own unique competencies and skills. But two areas in which no computer or artificial intelligence can possibly deliver are empathy and curiosity. Based on this idea, the central idea of this book is how school system reinforces natural empathy and curiosity in a child. And I think this book really sort of holds that large point together. And it would be great to see a sequel. Ma'am, I'd like to shift to another very important piece of work that I think you were very involved with. And I think you alluded to it earlier, but we can get to it now. In 2022, you wrote the foreword, or one of the forewords for the Manodarpan survey, which was the well-being survey. This was the first time such a survey was carried out.
Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit about the need or the thinking behind that survey. I mean, I knew it came soon after COVID, but it possibly pre-existed even COVID, the need to do that.
Okay, so it's interesting that you asked me this question, because when we did the survey, it did catch the imagination of the nation, and it did figure in the newspapers for a day or two, but then after that it was forgotten, as most aspects related to mental health and well-being are forgotten. Which is something which I'm hoping that the NCF and the NEP will be able to correct. So you're right, it was the COVID-19 pandemic, which it was a very difficult phase for all of us. For us in the administration and governance, for teachers, for parents, for children. For children, it was very, very tough. And because of the extended period for which, these children were forced to stay indoors with barely any physical interaction with their community, with their peer group, with their family members, with their neighbors, etc. Mental health issues, it was felt that they would be on the increase, and that is why we did this. And in this survey, this was a voluntary survey.
Mm-hmm.
So we sent it to the states, and we said, children who are approximately 15 years old, averagely 15 years old, not approximately, which is grade 6 to 12, they are free to become a part of the survey. And you'll be surprised to know, Vinati, that out of the 3.8 lakh children who voluntarily participated in this, not a single state or union territory went unrepresented.
Amazing.
Everywhere we had children who participated. Now, the findings of the survey were very, very interesting. We found that, we had asked questions like, what is your satisfaction with your personal life or school life?
Mm-hmm.
What is your feeling about your body image?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you find it difficult to initiate conversations or ask questions?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go down under peer pressure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have lack of concentration or anxiety, mood swings? Online learning, was it difficult? Because of social interaction not being there during the COVID classes, did you find it difficult? Did your anxiety grow? Things like that. Now, in our findings, what we found was that the highest percentage of students who said, that they have anxiety, it was related to exams, results, and studies.
Mm-hmm.
And we also found that in general, because it was the middle stage and the secondary stage. So in general, we found that both the stages were almost going neck to neck. But when it came to satisfaction with personal life, At the secondary stage, it went down, and more for the girls than for the boys.
Mm-hmm. So that- mhm,
Same thing, satisfaction with school life, it went down,
mhm,
more for the secondary and more for boys this time.
mhm,
Okay, so these were actually the ones which stood out, because most other things, were going neck to neck, but anxiety stood out as something which almost 83% of the students said we have anxiety related to studies, exams, and results.
mhm,
And we found that personal life and school life, secondary stage pe different results are.
mhm,
Similarly, when we said, what is your happiness quotient? How happy are you? Uh, as they went to secondary level, the happiness quotient was coming down.
mhm.
So these results showed to us that, we are actually ignorant about certain aspects which are impinging on education. A child who is not happy in school life, a child who is not personally happy, who has anxiety, how is the child going to learn? It's impossible. So, a non negotiable and precondition for learning is very good mental health and well being. A lot of happiness inside the child and joy inside the child. Only then the child is going to do well and learn. And this is something that stood out in this survey.
Absolutely, ma'am. And this is the space in which we work, and this survey has become sort of our Bible as we think through, our solutions and surveys we want to run, and so on and so forth. And what we found actually brilliant was that when asked if they take responsibility for their own life and results, they actually said yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, despite going through this,
Yeah.
disengagement or worry, they're still saying, I'll
Yes.
handle it if I'm equipped.
Yeah.
Uh, which I found so amazing, because this is not, they're not playing a blame game. They're saying, equip me, educate me, provide me the resources. I'm still responsible for my life. They didn't shift
Yes. They didn't
anything
shift.
onto anybody else. So, student agency you've spoken about before, I think this is where it's critical that I think some education around these aspects and them understanding themselves and how to navigate, I think also has the ability to move the needle uh, at the school system level. Um, and and I also want to say, ma'am, all in our research, we found that, and I know you do some work in contemplative studies. You've been if I may say, a student of the Bhagavad Gita and some contemplation work that you've been doing for so many years. Um, Neuroscience and contemplative studies are coming together and saying, look, even well-being is a skill, right? So we can actually train a mind to be less distracted, or we can actually train a mind to be slightly less in terms of the time they still
Yeah.
procrastinate. Uh, and also that just because there isn't a discernible mental disorder doesn't mean that a child is flourishing, that they need training
Absolutely.
around
Yeah.
this work. Um,
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head, Vinati. What is assumed is that 100% of the children are fine unless proven otherwise by a psychiatrist or a counselor,
correct.
and that too, we have nothing to do with it. And there is this kind of taboo about all this, but I think the world, thankfully, even in India, we are coming to terms with it in a very positive way. And it is important, if you see the NEP also, it mentions that we need counselors at every stage. Every school should have them.
Mhm,
NCF also mentions it. It's really important that the teacher training integrates
mhm.
counseling as a part of it for all teachers now.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like, if you can go back to Power of Curiosity, and if you can take Alphabet and retrain her in some of these ways, and then she becomes more cognizant of all the aspects of the brain in your classroom, that the outcomes that she eventually delivers are so different, because it's
Yeah.
been a while since she's trained too. So
Yeah.
she has to kind of re-engage with that aspect of her professional development as a teacher.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
um, Ma'am, I want you to just speak freely now about, your vision for education in this country. We have a wide landscape. As we say on this podcast, there are the plush schools, there are the sort of humble settings. You've established the centrality of the teacher. Uh, if what are your predictions for how this will work out for us as a country, just where we are going on the education landscape, and also the integration of technology to deliver some of the outcomes that you've envisioned?
So, Vinati, let me start with some facts and figures.
Yes.
25 crore children go to schools in this country, in our country today. There are close to 96 lakh teachers on the rolls. There are close to 15 lakh schools in the country. Out of these 15 lakh countries, 11 and a half or so are government schools. And the rest are either trust or, aided schools or private schools. Now, in these schools, we collect data in the form of UDICE. You must be knowing about UDICE. So, UDICE is the system through which we collect data school-wise from every school. What we found is that in up to grade 5, teaching in the regional language happens in about 72 to 73% schools in India. 28% schools still do not teach in the regional language. The vision of NEP is my vision. I mean, now I have adopted it as my vision. If we do not bring back the mother tongue or the known language of the child into the school system, we are as there is a UNDP paper, research paper, UNESCO research paper, which says that if the child doesn't know the language in which the child is being taught, then the child is left to sink or swim on its own. So if we do not bring back the language known to the child inside the classroom as the medium of instruction, in the foundational stage particularly, and also in the preparatory stage, we are letting the child sink or swim. Our country, the demographic dividend, we are going to reap it till 2047 to 2050, which means that the age group between 15 and 55, the working age population, we will have the largest population in the world. Now, that is called the demographic dividend. And if that dividend is something which we are not able to reap for, being a stickler to humko Angrezi hi padhani hai ya humko kuch aur padhana hai, then we are losing out on a huge number of children. So my vision is that, schools take up teaching in the mother tongue or the regional language, at least in the first 2 stages. The NCF allows you to teach the second language, which is a non-native language. It could be English. It allows you to teach it from grade 1. It doesn't say don't teach it. But usko agar the child has to learn to read and write and learn to learn, the child has to know a language. So this is the first thing that we need to do. And I think I see India doing it in the coming years, because there's a lot of awareness about this now. A lot of work is being done on producing bilingual and, books in various languages. And there is also an aspirational demand coming up, from the ground for this. So I'm hoping that this will catch up soon, but it should be there in the coming 10 years or so when we are supposed to implement the NEP. That is the first thing. The second thing I feel is that unless we integrate the 21st century skills, we again will lose out on education. And now we have this huge opportunity through the NCF, where competency-based education and competencies based on skills, integrated with skills, is now the buzzword. There is a line in the National Curriculum Framework which says, we need to reduce the centricity of textbooks. I love that line. Which means that it is not textbooks that we are teaching or learning for our children. It is competencies now that we focus on. Textbooks are just the tool for ensuring that the child achieves those competencies. And that it's a huge paradigm shift. And I see our country doing it in the coming 4 to 5 years. It will happen. And, we are already very high on the Global Innovation Index. I hope that we will go higher on HDI and HCI. And, we are already the fourth largest economy. I think with all these things, the focus on skill integration, the focus on local language, and a lot of technology, which will help translations and which will help every child get access to material in their own language.
Mhm.
I think learning is going to become so relevant and so joyful and engaging. Things are going to change, and they're already changing.
It's fantastic, ma'am. There's so much hope. I think this idea of teaching in vernacular, there's so much research on the cognitive load between the sink and swim, and time has gone by where we didn't do that. And I think the word aspirational also kind of changes. While I'm articulate in English, I do look back and think today, in order to engage with my own country, I wish I was speaking better Hindi or thinking in Hindi, for example. That's something that now hits me. But it's time has passed. But I think you're right. I think with the commitment that we are seeing, this will happen for all of us. Any message for the teachers? You call them oxygen. I think they will be the oxygen. Any message for the teachers? A lot of teachers will listen to this podcast and go back re-energized. So your message for the teachers now.
Well, I just want to tell them that they are the in-house parent in schools.
Mm-hmm.
They are the in-house friends in schools, in-house mentors, in-house guides. They are multitasking in schools,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very proud of them. The nation is very proud of them. And as long as they are able to even make one child contribute to the nation, they've done their job. As the ex-secretary of school education, I want to say that they're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure that'll mean the world. And thank you for your contribution in this space. I know you have another role in Gujarat now. I'm sure you're going to re-engage with education. I hope to have you on this podcast again, because like I said, there are so many aspects that I would like to speak about. And I also want to mention that, I'd written a cold email to you to engage with me. And I'm astonished at your humility to just write back and say, I'll talk to you. Thank you for that. I think, that kind of leadership behavior where somebody in the education sector, we're a very tiny outfit, reaches out to you and you say, I'll speak to you. It just gives me at least personal sense of hope and conviction that everybody who's coming together in the education space has your vision and your humility to make this happen.
Vinati, it is our duty as civil servants, to help anybody we can in any which way we can. That is our motto when we become civil servants. And not just help, to engage, to collaborate, because you are also working for the cause of education. If I can, in any way be of assistance, it's my privilege.
Thank you, ma'am. And ma'am, I'll already reserve you for a podcast on neuroscience and contemplative studies, because that's going to be a very fascinating conversation. How do we integrate contemplative and brain work into our school systems to address some of the well-being issues? So I would love to have you on another podcast. Thank you. I'm grateful to you, and thank you for your role as an educator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinati. Thank you so much.